Welcome back to our podcast. I'm the gentleman, accompanied by the disturbed Southern Belle.
Hello.
And in this episode, we will be talking about a rather unpleasant bit of business of the U.S., MK Ultra.
Ooh, yeah.
Probably one of the most infamous things the government has done.
It's pretty out there when you really get down to it.
Which is ironic because there's obviously stuff we don't know about
there's
a lot.
The majority of what was done during this project, we have no clue because almost all the records were destroyed.
Which, to be fair, is probably why it's as infamous as it is.
Yeah, that's part of it. Just because of what little we do know. And what little we do know ain't good.
No, it is not.
But anyway.
So, Project MK Ultra was an illegal human experimentation program that was designed and then undertaken by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA.
Right.
It was done to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations as a way of weakening an individual's will as to force confessions using brainwashing and psychological torture.
Right.
The term comes from the CIA cryptonym, with MK standing as an arbitrary prefix for the Office of Technical Service, and Ultra is just an arbitrary word out of the dictionary used to name the project.
Well, a lot of their projects have weird names. I mean, there's going to be several of them named here, and they are just named odd stuff. And if you heard the name, you would have no clue what any of these projects, and they would be some of the off-the-wall stuff, and it'd be called something
Which
like...
is probably done on purpose.
Project Artichoke is one of them. And I mean, that sounds like what?
Yeah.
And it's just nuts. But anyway,
like I said, that's probably done for a purpose.
It's done for a purpose, right? So it would never have any ties. Sure, it's just very confusing, just very random. You wouldn't have any clue.
Yeah. But anyways, this began in 1953, which actually I will come back to that later because it's kind of funny, and was halted in 1973. It used many methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions. This included the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD.
Yep, that was a big one they like to use.
Yep.
Just acid, if anyone doesn't know. You know, by the more, if you just didn't know, it is just acid. You know what it does? It causes hallucinations. People call them trips,
It's the iconic hippie drug.
There you go. I mean, it is. I mean, it basically, that's what it is.
That's what most people are going to know it for.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
Most people probably know it by LSD, but some people maybe just never heard of that term and maybe have only heard it called by acid. So I was just saying, just in case.
No, it's a good thing to make known. But yeah, other chemicals were also used, and all, as you can imagine, without the subject's consent.
Pretty much. There was just a handful that volunteered. But almost all, no, they had no idea at all. They would tell them like 20 minutes after they gave it to them or something, hey, we just dosed you LSD. Yeah, God.
Which I imagine made the whole experience so much better.
I mean, it's not funny. It's just funny because... What?
Because of the absurdity of it
is. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
See.
But anyways, other methods that were implemented, including electroshocks, always pleasant.
Yep.
Hypnosis, sensory deprivation, also always pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
Isolation, always pleasant.
Oh, yeah.
And verbal and essay type abuse.
Yep.
I'm not even going to joke about that. That's not something to joke about.
No, the essay even sometimes wasn't even like what you would think. It was using objects and things, but bad enough.
Arguably worse.
Yeah, in some ways it could
depending on the objects used.
Yeah, depending on what was used. Yeah, it could be worse. Ugh.
But there were also other forms of torture that I'm not going to get into at the moment. As for the origin, during the 1940s, bad people German scientists began conducting interrogation experiments. In these experiments, they used things like barbiturates, morphine derivatives, and hallucinogens, such as mescaline. The aim of the experiments was to develop a truth serum, one that was strong enough to eliminate the will of a person being questioned.
Yeah.
Which, yay!
That sounds horrible.
Yes, it does.
Really, but of course, the U.S. had taken it a bit further, but anyway.
As you will hear in a moment. This led to American interest in 1943 and led to the Office of Strategic Services, which was the United States' first intelligence agency, to begin working on a truth drug that would produce uninhibited truthfulness in an interrogated person.
Right.
Later, in 1947, the U.S. Navy initiated Project Chatter, which was the first interrogation testing of LSD on human subjects.
Right.
Then, in 1950, the CIA, under the direction of Walter Bedell Smith, initiated a series of interrogation experiments involving human subjects, beginning with the launch of Project Bluebird, which was officially renamed Project Artichoke.
Yep.
On August 20th of 1951.
Good old artichoke.
Yep. It was then directed and overseen by Brigadier General Paul F. Gaynor. The objective of Artichoke was to determine if an individual could be made to involuntarily perform an act of attempted assassination.
So, yeah, basically kind of like...
sleeper agents.
Pretty much. Yeah, like they called them robot agents, but it's the
Yes.
same difference. It's pretty much they'd hear a noise or a song or a phrase. It's supposed to be just all different kinds of things that would supposedly trigger them, and then they would just immediately go into this, I've got to kill the president or whatever, whoever.
Which is really cool in theory, really terrifying in theory as well.
Because then they're supposed to be able to say something that's literally supposed to wipe their memory, and they don't even remember doing it.
Yep.
Now, they say they never was able to do that, but...
As if they would tell us if they did.
True. But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, so morphine, mescaline, and LSD were given to unknown CIA agents in an attempt to cause amnesia in the subjects. The project was also aimed to study the use of certain viruses as potential incapacitating agents.
Right, like give them some kind of flu or something that would incapacitate them temporarily, yeah.
So the MKUltra project was headed up by Sidney Gottlieb. I know I'm mispronouncing that. German scientist. Or chemist, rather. It also was headed up by Sidney Gottlieb and began under the order of then CIA Director Alan Dulles, Dulles, on April 13th of 1953. Now, here's where that date I mentioned comes into play. So, Gottlieb was also the name of the founder of the Gottlieb Company, I think it's company, which was an arcade company that is most well known for their pinball and arcade games. They even created the first coin-operated pinball machine in 1931.
Wow. Well, he definitely went a totally different way.
Yep.
He wasn't interested in entertaining people. He's interested in breaking people's spirits and minds.
Which, to be fair, some arcade games are known to do that.
Yeah, maybe. You're right. You never know.
As well as pinball.
I guess.
Just a different type of torture when you think about it.
Maybe.
Anyways, I just thought that was a neat fact. Because that's the same lifetime right there.
I know.
Two men with the same name.
Pretty much, yeah.
In America, of all things.
I know. Doing so many different...
Just doing completely opposite things. One creating games, the other this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just found that interesting.
It is.
So anyways, MKUltra, its aim was to develop mind-controlling drugs that were to be used in Soviet bloc, which was in response to alleged Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean use of mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war during the Korean War.
Right.
So the CIA wanted to be able to implement similar methods on their own captives, and were also interested in manipulating a foreign leader, and even devised several schemes to drug Fidel Castro.
Which is crazy when you think about it.
Yes, it is.
But, oh my gosh.
Anyways, as stated, most experiments were done without the subject's knowledge. In some instances, academic researchers were funded from grants from CIA front organizations and were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes.
Right. They set up these different, like, oh, this is the foundation of learning or something, just some weird name, and gave them a grant, and they're like doing this research for them, and they're actually doing it for the CIA, and they had no clue.
Yep. So, the CIA documentation suggests that they were involved in the investigation of chemical, biological, and radiological methods of mind control as a part of MKUltra.
Good grief.
It's estimated that $10 million or more were spent on the project, which would be approximately $87.5 million today.
So, just a small amount.
Just a tiny amount, just pocket change.
Sure.
The Army was also subjected to testing of LSD, which occurred in 3 phases. Phase 1 included over 1,000 U.S. soldiers who willingly volunteered for testing of chemical warfare experiments, which is insane.
Now, they may have not really known exactly what they were volunteering for. They may have thought it was something else.
True.
But still, yeah, it is kind of nuts.
Phase 2 had 96 volunteers who were then dosed with LSD in evaluation of the possibility of intelligent uses of the drug.
Right.
Phase 3 included projects Third Chance and Derby Hat, which conducted experiments on 16 unwitting non-volunteer test subjects that, after receiving doses of LSD, were then interrogated as part of Operation Field Tests.
Well, yeah. You gotta go, you gotta get all aspects of it there. You can't just give it to people who know.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, after his retirement in 1972, Gottlieb dismissed the entire effort of the project as useless. However, files that were later found in 1977 contained 700 pages of new information that showed that the experiments had continued after the program was supposedly halted by Gottlieb's orders on July 10th of 1972.
Yes, supposedly halted.
Yeah. Key word there.
We halted that. You don't got to worry about that. We're done with the LSD, guys.
Just goes to show, don't trust the alphabet agencies.
Well, there you go.
Anyways, so LSD was isolated by Albert Hofmann in 1938 at the Sandoz laboratories in Basel, Switzerland.
Something like that, yeah.
Early directors of the program became aware of the existence of LSD and began to seek it out for use of mind control.
Of course.
So that was its,
that's
ironically
what they
enough,
wanted to
initial
use. What it was, yeah, what they wanted to use it.
That's what they discovered and created this thing for.
Yeah.
And then it just became a drug for hippies to use at raves.
Apparently.
That's a stereotype. Don't come after me.
Oh, yeah,
I know not all hippies are like that.
Well, of course not. But yeah, I mean, people use it now for recreational reasons. Yes, basically. Yes.
Anyways, Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to buy the entire supply of LSD for $240,000, which would be roughly $4.2 million in today's money.
Yeah, just dropping the hat.
Again, just pocket change.
Yep.
The large supply gave Gottlieb the ability to fulfill his experiment by spreading LSD to prisons, hospitals, institutions, clinics, and foundations.
Sure.
This was in the hopes of giving it to unknown citizens so that they could be observed without their knowledge of having taken the drug.
Of course. Give it to them, see what happens. And then not tell them that you gave it to them, just see what happens.
On your own people.
Sure. Well, they're easiest to get to, you see.
Oh, that's fair,
you just
kind of
walk outside and snatch somebody off the sidewalk and drag them on in and dose them up and send them on their way.
Still, you're
I know.
People.
It's insane. I know, but that's what they did. I didn't do it. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I wouldn't even wanted to be a part of it, but that's what they did.
Anyways, early efforts focused on using LSD, which later went on to dominate many of MKUltra's programs. The CIA went to see if they could make Soviet spies defect against their will, and they wanted to know if the Soviets could do the same to one of their operatives.
Well, yeah, I know that.
At the start of the project in April of 1953, it included the administering of LSD to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and ladies of the evening.
Oh, yeah, you get those people, those undesirables there.
Or also, as one agency officer put it, and this is rather disgusting, people who could not fight back.
Fair, because they would have been people nobody would really listen to. Drug
addicts. The only people missing from this list is children.
Well, yeah, but it's true.
It wouldn't surprise me if they used it on children.
It wouldn't surprise me either. I wouldn't doubt it. What would stop them?
Absolutely nothing.
There you go.
Especially back then.
Well, now you got to take in consideration almost all the records were destroyed.
Yep.
They may have did it on children just because we don't.
Which is why I said it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Nope. It wouldn't surprise me if they did on anything. Pregnant women to see how it might affect the babies, even all kinds of crap. I wouldn't.
That's a pretty standard experiment back then.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I'm not saying they did, but I wouldn't be surprised.
No, this is the CIA we're talking about.
Exactly.
The shadow people.
Oh, there you go.
Anyways, in one instance, they administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days. It was also given to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, and other government agents, and members of the general public so that their reactions could be observed.
Oh, yeah, you don't spread it around, you see.
Yep.
You can't just give it to a few people, gotta give it to different types of people.
The overall aim was to find something that would either bring out deep confessions from an individual or to wipe a person's mind clean, so that they could then be reprogrammed as a robot agent, as the Bell put it earlier.
Right, or sleeper agent,
as I
they're
put
called. Yeah, they're called all that. I mean, but it's the same difference.
Yep. So, military personnel that were given the drug were also threatened with court-martials if they told of the experiments.
Oh, yeah.
As most were given the drugs without their knowledge or consent, it actually led to many veterans who were subjected to experimentation to now seek legal and monetary reparations.
They should.
Yep.
No telling what he might have done to them.
So, Operation Midnight Climax had the CIA setting up several brothels within agency safe houses in San Francisco.
Of course.
Which, oh my God, that name.
That's the only one that even kind of sounds like something, don't it? Like what it's supposed to be about. I mean, not that the LSD would be involved, but, they're sending them to brothels. You know what they're doing, so yeah.
I just got to put it out there. I love that name.
It's a good one.
Especially when you consider that brothels.
Yeah. Midnight Climax. Why not? Sure. All right. So we're out there on the Midnight Climax.
Anyways, away from this, they did this in order to get a selection of men that would likely be too embarrassed to talk about their experience.
Fair.
That is very fair, yes.
Because they would have been doped up. God knows what they would have probably been doing.
And I imagine more than a few of them were...
probably people, married men, things like that.
Exactly where I was going
public
with that.
figures, that didn't want it to get, yeah. Or people who just didn't want somebody to know they went to a brothel. Most men are not, out bragging about it, per se.
No.
I mean, they want to go, that's fine. But I'm just saying, it ain't something most people are, I pay for sex all the time. Most people are not like that.
So. No, they are not. Mostly because that's just not really something
to brag
that
about?
Deserves to be bragged about.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't think so, but whatever.
It's not exactly an achievement.
Not necessarily, no, but whatever.
Away from this, the men were then dosed with LSD and sent into the brothels, which were equipped with one-way mirrors, sometimes called two-way mirrors.
Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's technically a one-way mirror. They can see through. You can only see the mirror side.
Yeah. And the men were secretly filmed during their sessions.
Oh, yeah, God. Wouldn't you just love to see those tapes just to say, oh, my God, that had to have been craziness.
Yes.
It had to have been. Jesus. I mean, somebody tripping on acid and had no clue. It's not funny, but God, could you just imagine? And then imagine having to be in there with them. Like, what is wrong with this person, dude? Well, maybe they were in on it. I don't know. The prostitutes. I don't.
Or they probably just didn't care because they were getting paid.
No, maybe that's true too.
Anyways, again, away from this.
It's a good part. It's just so stupid. You can't help but laugh. I'm sorry.
It is.
But okay, anyway,
Very much.
Moving on.
Another experiment had heroin addicts being bribed into taking LSD by offering them more heroin in payment.
Well.
So, yeah.
Okay. Sure. That sounds like...
it works, so...
I would say so. If they were a heroin addict, I'm guaranteeing they'd probably do a lot of stuff to get more heroin. Yeah, it's sad, but we know it's true.
So anyways, in other experiments, people were given LSD, again without their knowledge, and they were then interrogated under bright lights while doctors sat in the background taking notes.
Which had to freak you out even more, probably. Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, very much so. The subjects were told that if they did not reveal their secrets, their quote-unquote trips would be extended. These individuals included CIA employees, military personnel, and agents that were suspected of working with the Soviets during the Cold War.
So basically, if you don't tell us what we want, that will just give you more and more and more.
Yes.
Oh.
Nightmare.
Yeah. Especially if you didn't want to take that crap,
So there were long-term debilitations and even deaths that resulted from this project.
I can imagine so. God knows how many.
Yeah. Gottlieb also thought that the drug could be used in covert operations.
Of course.
Since its effects were temporary, he thought it could be given to a high-ranking official, and they could then be used to impact the course of important meetings, speeches, and the like.
God, could you imagine, like, somebody like the president getting up there high on LSD, not knowing it, especially the craziness they'd be saying, like, during an important speech or during some kind of, like, really important trade meeting or, you know what I mean? Kind of, good God.
It would be interesting.
It would be interesting. God, cause a war in some cases or something. Yeah. Jesus.
So, to test how this would work, he then initiated a series of experiments where LSD would be given to people in normal settings without warning.
Right.
Adverse reactions often occurred. One example was an operative that was dosed in his morning coffee, who then became psychotic and ran across Washington, D.C., thinking he was seeing a monster in every car that passed him.
Jesus.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah. Could you imagine that if you literally thought that's what you were seeing? That would be a nightmare. If you thought you were seeing like monsters, demons, literally you were seeing it, good God, that would be nightmare-inducing.
Yes, it would. So, the experiments continued on even after a man named Frank Olson, who was an army chemist, was covertly dosed, and then 9 days later ended his time on this earth by jumping from a 13-story hotel room window. It's said that this was caused by deep depression Olson suffered after receiving the drug. A few days before his death, he quit his position as acting chief of Special Operations Division due to severe moral crisis concerning the nature of his biological weapons research. Fair.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder if Olson jumped from that window or if maybe he was thrown or pushed, because that's not something that's unheard of.
Yeah, really.
Among his concerns, he listed the development of assassination materials used by the CIA, the CIA's use of biological warfare materials in covert operations, experimentation with biological weapons in populated areas, collaboration with former evil German scientists, guys, under the Operation Paperclip, LSD mind control research, and the use of psychoactive drugs being used during interrogations under Project Artichoke.
So, just some mild concerns.
Yes.
Nothing really to get too upset about, but, something maybe just to bring to somebody's attention. Yeah.
Pretty much.
My God, I can understand having a moral crisis of being involved in that crap.
Yes.
I mean, a decent person would, but still, anyway.
So the test subjects that were made aware of the project and its intentions were very often singled out for more extreme experiments. One such case included 77 drug-addicted participants being given the drug for 77 consecutive days.
Good God.
That sounds awful.
It does. It makes you wonder, how much were they giving to them? Like just one dose a day, or like numerous doses throughout the day? Like just keeping them up high all the time? Ugh.
Yeah. So another technique that was used to intravenously administer a barbiturate to a subject into one arm, and then just as the person began to fall asleep, they would be administered an amphetamine into their other arm. Other drugs that were used in experimentation include heroin, morphine, mescaline, alcohol, sodium pentothal, and many others.
Sodium pentothal, I think it's supposed to be a truth serum, they say. I've heard it said. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's basically just supposed to lower inhibitions and things, which, would make you not as likely to not say, like being drunk.
Yeah.
You might be more likely to say something or slip up, but still.
So, after this, there were experiments on Canadians. Experiments were later exported to Canada when Scottish psychiatrist Donald Cameron Donald Ewan Cameron was recruited by the CIA. Cameron was the creator of this psychic driving concept, which was of great interest to the CIA. He had been trying to create a method that would correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and then reprogramming the psyche.
Well, that's not bad in that.
But, as you can imagine,
it went to hell in a handbasket.
Planned to be used for less than reputable things.
I can't believe that.
So Cameron commuted from Albany, New York to Montreal every week to work at the Allen Memorial Institute of McGill University.
Mm-hmm.
He was paid $69,000 between 1975 to 1964, or 1957 to 1964, which would be
$766,936 pretty much. That's not nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, a little over $750,000 today.
Right.
So while there, he conducted MK Ultra studies for the CIA. In addition to his experimentation with varying paralytic drugs, he also experimented with LSD and using electroconvulsive therapy that was set to 30 to 40 times higher than the normal power that would be used.
Good God.
Enough to fry a person, it would sound like.
Yeah. God, that's awful.
Yes. So his driving experiments essentially consisted of putting a subject into a drug-induced coma for weeks at a time, up to 3 months in one case.
Good grief.
He would then play tape loops of noise or simple repetitive statements. The experiments were most often carried out on patients that had entered the institute for common problems like anxiety disorders or postpartum depression.
Good grief.
His treatments resulted in subjects sometimes forgetting how to talk, having amnesia, patients experiencing urinary incontinence, forgetting who their parents were, and thinking that their interrogators were their parents.
That's so sad.
That is very sad.
That is. I mean, somebody who maybe just had anxiety or just postpartum depression just went there to get help, and good God.
Yeah.
Almost basically induced a stroke-like behavior in them.
Pretty much.
Yes.
So his work was inspired and paralleled by British psychiatrist William Sargent at St. Thomas Hospital in London and Belmont Hospital in Sutton. Sargent is alleged to have worked with the M15, yeah, and also to have experimented on his patients without their consent and causing similar long-term damage.
The M15 is sort of like the British CIA kind of stuff. They're like the secret police sort of thing. If people didn't know, I mean, there's something like that. So it'd be kind of like working with their version of the CIA. So
yeah. So that the U.S. could avoid criminal prosecution, the CIA created secret detention centers, sometimes referred to as black sites.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea there. Don't want to get caught anyway.
No, they were mostly in Japan, West Germany, and the Philippines. The CIA then captured people that were suspected of being enemy agents or people that they deemed expendable.
So more probably drug addicts, homeless people, or just people they didn't think anybody would miss, basically, too, as well.
So these people were then the subjects of experimentation and torture.
Nah, I don't figure that probably happened. I mean, nothing we've heard so far has been that bad.
Oh, no.
I mean, so, yeah, that definitely probably didn't happen. Oh, my God.
So prisoners were interrogated while being administered psychoactive drugs, electroshocked, subjected to extreme temperatures, and sensory isolation, as well as similar tactics in order to help develop a better understanding on how to destroy and control human minds.
God, that's so sad.
That is. So, in 1973, amid the panic surrounding the Watergate scandal, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered that all files related to the project be destroyed.
Of course.
Which led to almost all related documents being destroyed. However, a cache of approximately 20,000 documents was later found that had been incorrectly stored in a financial records building and were later discovered in 1977. In December of 1974, the New York Times alleged that the CIA had been involved in illegal domestic activities, which included experiments on U.S. citizens during the 1960s.
Nah.
This led to an investigation by Congress in the form of the Church Committee, which was headed by Frank Church, who was a lawyer and politician, as well as the Rockefeller Commission, which looked into the illegal domestic activities of the CIA and the FBI and intelligence-related agencies.
I kind of also wonder if maybe the papers that they found, maybe they were hidden purposely. by somebody who, was afraid to say anything, because you know how those people are.
It wouldn't be unheard of.
So, and the reason I say that is because this was something that was highly classified. So, they would have been very, very careful what they were doing with those papers.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It does make you wonder if maybe somebody hid them there so that they could be found later, which great, because this should have came to light, but, it does kind of make you wonder about that.
So, in the summer of 1975, reports from both the committee and the commission revealed to the public for the first time that the CIA and the Department of Defense had indeed conducted experiments of both unknowing and volunteer human subjects as part of an extensive program to find out how to influence and control human behavior through the use of psychoactive drugs as well as other chemical, biological, and psychological means.
So, yes, they pretty much said, yep, they did it.
Yes.
What you thought was true, which is crazy, because most of the time this stuff gets swept under the rug. You don't hear about it.
It was also revealed that Frank Olson had died after the administration of LSD, following recommendations given by the Church Committee. President Gerald Ford issued the first executive order on intelligence activities in 1976. In the order, it prohibited experimentation with drugs on human subjects, except with the informed consent in writing and witnessed by a disinterested party of each such human subject.
Right, which it should be.
Yes.
We've said that before. Definitely, you should know what's being done to you.
Absolutely. It was later reported that the finding of the hidden stash of documents that the CIA subsequently acknowledged that the tests had little scientific rationale.
I guess so.
So, yeah, this was just another instance of, I just wanted to see what would happen.
It sounds like it, and what we says, what's even sadder is we don't even know what all happened.
No.
I mean, we really don't know how many people could have possibly died, how many people maybe even just killed, or what God's names happened. Because for what we just heard is bad enough. There's so much more.
Yeah. So, this is probably getting a little too far into conspiracy territory, but I'm willing to bet that they succeeded.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm going to be honest with you. I would not doubt that they don't have something similar to some sort of what we would call a sleeper agent. I would not be surprised. I mean, I'm guessing there's been all kinds of stuff done that we will never know about. I mean, just stuff that would probably actually scare us if we knew about it.
Oh,
stuff
absolutely.
that they probably know and things. So it might be good, some of the stuff we don't know, just because of the widespread panic it would probably cause. But Jesus, there's no telling what they know and what they've done and what could really be accomplished in some cases. Now, I'm not saying it's gone that far, but would you be surprised?
No.
And I mean, look at how far they're getting with AI stuff and these robots. Do you really think it's going to be that much further? Or they're actually going to be able to build something that's really going to look human and could probably act human?
No.
You really think we're that far away from it?
Absolutely not.
And imagine that as a soldier.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Or as an agent or just walking around and you didn't realize it was robot.
So, in Canada, it actually took a little while longer for the experimentation to come to light.
Right.
It did not become widely known until 1984 when it was reported by a CBS news show known as The Fifth Estate. It was made public that not only the CIA had financed Cameron's studies, but that the Canadian government had been fully aware of the project and that they had later provided another $500,000 in funding to help continue the experimentation.
Oh, God, that makes it even sadder.
Yeah. This revelation derailed efforts of Canadian victims to sue the CIA. However, the Canadian government eventually settled out of court for $100,000 to each of its 127 victims.
Which, I mean, it's good they got something, but that is not very much when you think about what they were subjected to the point they couldn't talk and stuff. You had urinary incontinence, couldn't remember their parent. I mean,
So, one last thing here. Cameron actually suffered a heart attack and passed away on September 8th of 1967.
Uh-huh.
And all of his personal records of his involvement and I don't blame his family for this, they destroyed it all.
Yeah.
His own family destroyed every personal document he had that linked him to the experiments.
I guess I can see it to a point.
Absolutely. I can't say I wouldn't do the same if it was someone I truly cared about.
Right. You wouldn't want their name to be dragged through the mud, but then again, God, I don't know. It's also that moral dilemma I'm thinking about. Want it to be known, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend on what he had written down. If it was stuff that was really already was reported and stuff, then screw it. Just, Now,
for me, I'm going to be completely upfront about this. I don't care what other people think of me about this. I would do it purely for self-preservation.
Well,
because that if you are connected to a person that done that kind of thing, you yourself are going to be drugged through hell.
You would be. I mean, you would be, because it's like
just because other people will not accept you for that
Right.
because you have the same blood as someone like that.
It's true in some cases. I get that too.
Because they'll think you'd be willing to do the same thing because you share blood.
True. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't understand where they're coming from. I'm just saying the moral side of it, to me, in a way, I don't know.
The moral side of it, it's a bad thing to do. It sucks. It's bad.
I get it also from a few different ways, from trying to protect the person you care about, and also, like you said, self-preservation. I see that as well. And then maybe what they had didn't really tell anything. It was really, it just made him look bad and nothing else. I mean, it wouldn't really added anything to it. Then, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's a sucky situation to be in for the family. I understand that, because maybe they didn't even know until after. Maybe they started going through his stuff and found that.
Which, to be fair, that makes a lot of sense considering the fact that that particular alphabet agency would not want civilians or anyone who's not directly involved in that kind of experiment to be knowledgeable about it.
Exactly. So, yeah.
That poses a security risk.
They most likely had him locked up and stuff, maybe in an office or something that the family just didn't go into because they knew he was a psychiatrist and they respected that. He's supposed to have patient files and things.
Yeah.
But then after he passed away, perhaps they were just going to clean up everything, like people do, and just ran across it. So, I mean, it could have been that, but it's sad. And it's sad, like you said, that the government did it to their own people. All that's sad. But it is what it is. And it happened. But anyway, we hope you did enjoy those episodes as much as you could, of course, talking about the human experimentation. On our next episode, we are going to be talking about some creepypastas. We're going to talk about some of the more famous ones and some of the ones that maybe are a little less known. There are some very fun ones out there that maybe some people don't know that I personally have read that I wouldn't mind going over.
I can just say I'm really happy to be going back to my own personal
fun,
territory.
At the very least, right? We're
definitely creepypastas is where most of my knowledge is.
Yeah, we'll cover a lot of the big ones like Slender Man, like the Russian sleep experiment and some of those, but we'll also go over some others. I mean, I've got some others that are just, crazy ones. But anyway, we hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and don't forget to stay disturbed.